Hi members, sorry. Good evening members. Good evening for tonight's committee meeting. Can I just see if there's any apologies for absence first of all? Councillor Fern.
Yeah, thank you, Chair. Apologies for absence from Councillor Kemp, and Councillor Joy is substituting, but he's delayed in traffic at the moment, so he's on his way.
Thank you, Councillor Fern. We've got no other apologies. Record of the meeting. Can I sign the record of the meeting held on the 7th of February 2023 as correct, and the record of the joint meeting of committees 24th of May 2023 as correct? Is that agreed? Agreed. Thank you. Thank you, members. There are no urgent matters from me this evening. Are there any declarations or disclosable pecuniary interest and other significant interest this evening for anyone on the agenda? Fantastic. Great. Okay, we're going to go straight to Mandy for the update on licensing shared service, please, Mandy. And this is a new star report. I'm really excited about this one. It's a really good one. So thank you for this, the detail for tonight.
Thank you, Chair. Good evening, members. The purpose of the report is to update members on the progress of the shared licensing service between Gravesham Borough Council and Medway Council. The shared service arrangement, for those of you who don't know, came into effect on the 1st of January 2019. At Appendix A, which is on page 17 of the report, It provides you with an overview and update on the progression of the service and includes our current structure. In summary, the team are responsible for discharging Gravesham Borough Council's and Medway Council's licensing functions in terms of administering and regulating the licensing regimes for a host of different licence types. The majority of our workload relates to premises and clubs selling alcohol and or providing regulated entertainment and or late night refreshments, and taxi and private hire drivers, vehicles and private hire operators. Additionally, we deal with things like street trading consents, charitable collections, scrap metal dealers, etc. We are continuing to build on our already impressive digital offering with the support of Gravesham's digital services team, which now includes the online street collection application form for Medway, featuring automated internal consultation with town centre managers, and responses and logging functions. The current structure of the team retains the same number of posts as previously existed for Medway and Gravesham, and that has resulted in a larger single pool of officers to provide added resilience to cover the work of both licensing authorities. This is essential to cope with the additional burdens arising from new and expanding licensing regimes and ensures continuity of service during periods of staff sickness, annual leave, vacant posts, as well as during the pandemic. All current officers are highly trained, having achieved the Institute of Licensing Accredited Professional Licensing Practitioners qualification, and undertaken PACE and RIPA training, and that is with the exception of our licensing apprentice. Their knowledge and continued approach towards embracing change, coupled with the high level of managerial, administrative and technical support, has continued to prove invaluable in progressing the shared service to date. During the last 12 months, our previously vacant posts were successfully filled, and we had a full complement of staff for the first time since the commencement of the shared service. However, in mid-June, we had one licensing officer retire, and more recently, since the publication of this report, we've also lost one of our the licensing assistant. It is anticipated that these posts will be filled in the not-too-distant future. The team's ability through their hard work and dedication to provide an excellent shared service demonstrates the intended benefits of and continued need for maintaining a large pool of officers in a suitably structured team for resilience. Despite the recent staffing reduction, progress has been made in carrying out compliance and enforcement activities, including enhancing fee collection and implementing associated interventions following non-payment. We are pleased to report that since December 22, this has resulted in approximately £52,000 of unpaid or overdue annual premises licence fees across both authorities being collected. The debt at that time totalled approximately £64,000. Debt collection is now being undertaken monthly, and visits made to licensed premises to explain to the licence holder the implications for failing to pay annual licence fees. And that we would suspend their licence until such time as the payment has been made. And these visits usually result in the debt being cleared immediately. Visits are being undertaken to licensed premises either by way of spot check, responding to complaints received from members of the public, or as part of joint operations with other responsible authorities and or organisations such as the police and environmental health. Also within immigration team and food and safety team if we're going along to takeaways or restaurants. Officers inspect Medway licensed Hackney carriage and private hire vehicles by visiting taxi ranks, schools and prime locations such as supermarkets and train stations. And these visits are undertaken on ad hoc days and times, including weekends and out of hours, as and when appropriate. Recent inspections have identified only minor breaches, such as not displaying door signs or failing to notify us of an accident. In May 23, we participated in a multi-agency operation with the police, DVSA and Medway Council's environmental enforcement team stopping and checking vehicles. Only one taxi was in the vicinity at the time and was inspected by a senior licensing officer, and we're pleased to report that no defects or breach of licence conditions were found. And a further operation is proposed in the future, subject to the availability of the other agencies. Audits of gambling premises are ongoing to ensure the correct permits are in place for the types of machines that they have. And licensed operator audits and visit to the sexual entertainment venue are also scheduled to take place. Finally, the street trading and scrap metal licence compliance and enforcement, which is conducted by our environmental enforcement team on behalf of the licensing team. They've reported that between 2021 and 2023, they've successfully prosecuted 5 individuals for illegally trading as scrap metal dealers and have 3 pending. They have also investigated allegations of illegal street trading, given advice where appropriate to ensure compliance, and no prosecutions were necessary. Thank you.
Thank you, Mandy. A great report there. I go to members. Councillor Filmer.
Yeah, thank you, Chair, and thank you, Mandy, for that report. It's very reassuring. When we set that up in 2019, we was hoping that the strengths of both councils would join and help one another, and reading the report, it seems to be working very well. So thank you very much for the report.
Thank you, Councillor Filmer. Other questions from members? Councillor Howcroft-Scott.
Yeah, thank you, Mandy. A really comprehensive report, and well done. You know, you haven't got full team, but you're actually winning on the debt front and collections, and also, you know, tackling illegal activities. So thank you so much.
Thank you. I will pass that on to my team. That's greatly appreciated.
Councillor Brown.
Mandy, I'd like to add my thanks. I have 2 questions, and the first one is about your apprentice. How close would that apprentice be to being maybe matched to the vacancy?
Very.
That's very good.
Yeah.
That proves that we're doing something really right. Thank you very much for that. And the second question, which you may not have the figures for tonight, but I was just wondering which of the strands of work is, if you like, either in a growth phase or sort of in being the one that you have to expend the most energy and excess.
That is on the premises licences and the taxi. The other side is a smaller part of our regime, but the majority of our time is spent on premises licences under the Licensing Act and the Hackney Carriage and Private Hire industry. Thank you.
That's great. Thanks very much.
Thank you, members. Mandy, just a few points from me. Number one, can I just say, members, we sat with Mark and Mandy, and we looked at the shared service report. And Councillor Ferrer, remember before, it had lots of different stats and numbers, which I don't want to say didn't make sense. They made sense, but they were only live at the time they ever come. So we decided on this approach, and I hope members found it useful to be more succinct. So thank you very much for that. Can I just make sure, while Mark's here as well, to make sure them vacancies will be filled? The budget is there, isn't it, Mark? Because I can see, just by having a full team for that little bit of the time, really helped the team. So can we just have that reassurance?
Thank you. There we go. Yes, coincidentally enough, I ran it through the Gravesham management team on Tuesday, and so we will absolutely be going out to advert to fill those 2 vacancies, and then when the apprentice post becomes vacant again in May, we can look to recruit back to that as well to train another young person.
Fantastic, because you want to make sure, and you know I'm asking because we want to make sure that you still keep it in there. I think it was really good to see the scrap traders, because that was something that you've always been asked at every committee I've been over the years, and people were saying what you're doing with the scrap, and actually you've actually got it in there, and we've actually had prosecution, which I think is really, really good news. And just finally, I will say, from what Councillor Finn was saying as well about the whole service and the shared service between the two, the debt collection work is really good. You know, I know you're still on it, you're still having to be on it daily, but to have that amount of debt, then all of a sudden have that organisational approach where all of a sudden we've reduced it is amazing. So I'd like to again congratulate you on a great report, Mandy, and Mark as well. But I know Mandy's the one that done all the work. Can I, along with Mark.
That's my team.
Yeah, and I was just going to say credit to all the team as well, including the senior management as well. So, Vice Chair.
Thank you, Chair. It is the recommendation that the committee notes and comments on the report at Appendix A.
Is that seconded? Thank you, seconded. Is that agreed, members? Thank you very much. Thank you. Moving on to the next item, can I just ask members' agreement? Obviously, Nigel Jackson's here from the MOTDA. I want to invite him up because obviously we're talking about an item which includes the drivers, who and I know Nigel has been very helpful in this process. Is that agreed by members? Okay, Nigel, would you like to come up? Okay, Mandy, over to you for the contactless payment for taxi fares report, please.
Did you want to mention
I will touch on members. There's a recommendation in the paper around the tariff review. What I've recommended to members this evening is that I think we should take the tariff review out of this as the second recommendation, because it almost looks like it wasn't the intention, but it almost looks like that they won't accept going cashless if we didn't give a tariff review, and that isn't what it is. But I don't want that going to full council and looking like that. So we are definitely going to have a tariff review, but that will come back to a future meetings. So are members content that we lose the recommendation 2 around the tariff review and just keep recommendation 1, if it's agreed this evening, to go to full council? Is that agreed? Okay, thank you. Thank you, Mandy.
Thank you, Chair. The purpose of this report is for members to consider the results from the consultation on amending the Hackney Carriage and private hire policy, which was to include a mandatory condition for all licensed Hackney Carriage and private hire vehicles to have a functioning cashless payment facility available for fare-paying passengers, and determine whether to recommend the policy change to full council for approval. Following the Licensing and Safety Committee decision on the 7th of February 23, officers consulted on the proposed policy change. The consultation exercise was carried out between the 12th of June and the 23rd of July. 153 responses were received from the trade, with 47 agreeing with the policy change and 73 objecting and 3 not specifying their option. 20 responses were received from councillors, all agreeing to the policy change. No responses were received from the public. However, just for members' information, Kent Online interviewed Volks Taxis and published an online article on the 6th of January, which included a public survey where they asked the question, is it right to expect taxi drivers to accept card payments as well as cash? And the results were that 637 said yes, it's the way the world operates nowadays, and 132 said no, drivers can demand whatever type of payment that they like. Attached to Appendix D, which starts on page 41, is a summary of the responses received, and that's from the trade and councillors. All comments were received and considered by officers, and our comments are attached at Appendix E, which is on page 59. Included within those comments is our recommendation to change the previous proposal to amend the policy to include a mandatory vehicle licence condition and replace it with a policy requirement for all private hire and Hackney Carriage drivers, which would be enforced using the penalty point system detailed in Appendix E of the policy. The committee is therefore requested to recommend to full council for approval the inclusion of the following requirement in the Hackney Carriage and private hire policy. All licensed Hackney Carriage and private hire drivers must provide a payment facility in accordance with the guidance for electronic payment devices. Thank you. And as Councillor MacDonald mentioned, just following on from that separately, completely separate issue, is that we did receive a verbal notification from the Medway Licensed Taxi Drivers Association that they intended to submit a request for a tariff review. And therefore, I'm asking for you to authorise officers to implement a review of the current tariffs so we can start on that now in liaison with the MLTDA and then submit a pre-consultation report to a future meetings with the proposals for members to agree that for us to then go out to consultation. Thank you.
Sorry, thanks, Mandy. I'm just checking with Nicola about, because obviously we're withdrawing the recommendation to full council, but I presume we keep the recommendation to start the work on the tariff review, but without the formal part of it. Am I right in saying that? Yeah. Okay. Okay. Questions, members, to Mandy regarding the Councillor Fern.
Yeah, thank you, Chair, and thank you, Mandy, for this. I mean, this is something we was very keen to move forward last year, and you know, I'm pleased that we've sort of gone in the right direction, and you know, we've gone out to the consultation. But and I see from Mr. Jackson's report on the last sort of paragraph on page 35 that if this is supported, that the MLTDA team intend on setting up a workshop to assist them and advise all of the drivers, you know, how to set up and the best route, which is fantastic. In terms of the consultation, obviously it was a bit disappointing that the numbers were so low, and there were no members of the public that actually commented on it, with the exception of the Kent Online that you mentioned. But and I think in terms of looking at the responses from the trade, some of those points around connectivity was something that we discussed at the last licensing committee actually, and Mr. Jackson gave us a bit of reassurance over that. So I don't know, I'm fairly confident and happy with this, and I'm, you know, very much in favour of supporting this.
Thank you, Councillor Fern. Councillor Fillmore.
Yeah, thank you, Chair. When I first read this, I was quite surprised that it's actually had to come to this committee, because other business, and far be it from me to tell anyone how to run their business, that's a choice people have, how they run their business. But the market dictates how you charge your customer. And from my own personal experience, if I wasn't taking credit cards, I'd probably lose 98% of the money I take. So I'm quite surprised that the taxi drivers haven't already taken this initiative, because wherever you go now, people pay by card. So I was quite surprised that really it's had to come this far, that they haven't taken it on board before. But we're not saying they can't take cash, are we? We're saying there should be a facility for people to pay by card, which I think in this day and age is the right approach.
Nigel, would you like to come back with Councillor Fillmore?
Yeah, thank you, Chair. Just to address the slow uptake on the card payment facilities, there has been issues with Signal over the years. This has been a big stumbling block, which has now been overcome. It is the right for every driver to accept whatever payment they would like, and you are right saying that you know, in this day and age it should be a common practice. This is why the majority of our drivers do have card machines. There are elderly drivers which do have difficulty in dealing with new technology, which we hope to address that through our little workshops and bits and pieces if this is agreed by committee.
Thank you, Nigel. We'll come back to you in a moment anyway. Can I have Councillor Prenter?
Yeah, thank you. Yeah, I'm glad this is here. I totally support the use of card machines in all taxis in Medway. I think the actual Medway regulated trade actually needs a bit of a republicisation exercise, and I think this is a good opportunity, because most members of the public now are going to the unregulated taxi service, and one of the reasons they do is because they can use card. If my child is at the other end of Medway and they want to get a taxi, they haven't got any money, I can send them money because that is technology, and with confidence they can order that taxi. Just kind of a question to Mandy. Obviously, in the consultation, a few taxi drivers mentioned, but what do you do if you get to the end, the card doesn't work because there's either not a signal or their bank account? I see it no different to them getting the other end with not having any cash in their wallet and no other means of payment. What is the process for a taxi driver when they get to the other end of a fare and there is the inability to pay, please?
They normally reach agreement with the user. If the if the member of the public hired without an intention to pay, then that's known as bilking. That is a police issue, and they will have the recourse through the police, and they would have to call the police and log a complaint that way. Otherwise, it's normally an agreement whereby they would take details, make an agreement that they would pay direct to the office. If that doesn't happen, then their redress would be through the small claims court.
But this would be no real different. They get to the other end and their card doesn't work. That would be
Correct,
the same process.
Yes. Yeah.
Sorry, Chair, can I ask a question to Nigel?
Yeah, of course.
Obviously, you said in your submission that you'll do workshops. Is that only to MLTA, TDA members, or would that be to the whole trade within the regulated Medway licensed taxis?
No, the workshops we intend to set up will be for any licensed driver. We will be advertising that via our social media channels as well as through internal emails through the MLTDA. And maybe at persuasion of Mandy, she could publicise those dates via email to every single driver for me. That so everyone will be kept in the loop on this this important change.
Thank you, Councillor. Thank you, Councillor Brent. Councillor Scott.
Yeah, actually, Councillor Prenter took some of the things I was going to comment on. I was really impressed that actually, about 39% of councillors did respond and the quality of their response really, and that, we're bringing the taxi service, in my opinion, up to the 21st century. And, I do know that change is difficult, but you've got it in hand with training, and I do think it's the only way that we're going to be the likes of Uber. So I really embrace this change.
Thank you, Councillor Scott. Councillor Brake.
Thank you, Chairman. I think the area that I wanted to touch on, in fact, is I think we've started to open this up a little bit. And I'm just looking at the statement on car payment machines. All licensed hackney carriages and private hire drivers must provide a car payment facility in accordance with the guidance for electronic payment devices. But my reading of this report is that this is about Medway and Medway taxi companies that operate within Medway. And we all know that, we neighbour with obviously Gravesham. Where I live in Waterslade, we've got Tunbridge and Morlin, and these people are actually coming into Medway, and we know that you go to any railway station across Medway and you will find these very companies queuing up to offer their services alongside Medway taxi drivers. Should this report not actually be saying that all licensed hackney carriages and private hire drivers operating within Medway must provide a car payments facility?
We're unable to do that because we don't have the regulation for vehicles that are licensed elsewhere and drivers that are licensed elsewhere. This is for inclusion within the Medway Council's Hackney Carriage and Private Hire policy that is applicable to Medway Council's licensed Hackney Carriage and Private Hire drivers.
Okay. I just thought that we may have a way forward that could actually home in and make sure that that Medway drivers are being protected, which is something that they've been after us doing for some considerable time now. Now, out where I live in Waterslade, I know people that actually live in my ward that are licensed to operate in Tunbridge and Morlin. And what happens is if a call comes through, those people will come into Waterslade because it's right on their doorstep.
That's where the calls are actually made to that operator who then dispatches their licensed drivers and vehicles. We have no powers to govern those or regulate those.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Brake. Just to get before I come to Councillor Joy, can I just check, Mandy and Mark, Gravesham has no such policy like this at the moment, do they, with regards to cash machine?
No.
But it could be something that you
No,
look to yourself.
I would like to say, though, that the Kent and Medway Regulatory Licensing Steering Group, which is made up of all Kent and Medway licensed teams, this has been something that has been discussed, and they are looking to push it to try and make it a regulatory standard.
So they can be looking at our great work we're doing here and see what we're doing. Councillor Joy.
Thank you, Chair. I've just been reading through on Appendix B, and it looks like you're taking some wording from Brighton and Hove Council with regards to what the policy be held. One of the parts of that stating that cashless payment advice should be in public in view. Don't understand the rationale behind that, because normally when you get one of the machines that are listed below, they give you a sticker. So that sticker can be put in the window that actually shows that you take car payments. Putting something on display in the car, if it's forgotten and someone goes out, it's a reason for someone to smash the window and break into it, bringing in additional cost. And the wording is stating that it's looking at a cashless policy. Nowadays, most people probably do banking on their phone, and to make a backs payment from your phone that goes over immediately on nearly every bank in the UK is quite simple to do. Why hasn't that not been considered? Because with that, there is no charge issued to the driver, whereas with a card, there's an additional charge that's put on there from the fee and also the cost of the machine, and that cannot be passed on to the customer. If they pay by cash or pay by card, it's got to be the same fee. So to me, that will just say that all fees will go up. So the charge for journeys will go up for cash or non-cash payments, because to cover that additional cost, because we know that additional costs will get passed on to the end user at the end of the day. So is there any reason why that's not being considered?
I honestly don't really know how to answer that one, but no. This was driven initially by members. It was something that they asked us to look into, which was cash payment machines in vehicles. So the issue in relation to backs payments, etc., wasn't something that has been considered, no.
Nigel, would you like to come in? Because I'd imagine we're saying about data protection and stuff around this, but would you like to come in?
Yeah, thank you, Chair. I mean, obviously the card machines that we use are industry standard across the board. I've been a taxi driver for 17 years and I've never asked for a backs payment for a fare. It's all about customer service. A backs payment, I'm sure, would take considerably longer than taking a payment on a card. The cost element of this, just to put it into picture for the committee, I use a machine that's 0.79%. I can talk about me personally, but not everyone's situation is slightly different. Now, I take a third of my payment on card, a third on account work for a private hire operator, and a third in cash. So 0.79 divided by 3, we're looking at 0.2, 0.3% across the whole of my income for the cost of me using a card machine, which is pence in relation to the whole fare. Plus also, any business expense like that is tax deductible. So there's no argument on the cost side of it. This is why the tariff review is a completely separate issue to, the card mandate that we're putting through today, sir.
Thank you, Nigel. Councillor Sands?
Thank you, Chair. I've been reading on page 32 about these devices. I wonder, can Nigel tell us how many of your drivers have the hardwired machines? I do understand that they are cumbersome by the looks of things, but would they offer a far better service by means of getting a signal? If you go into some parts of Hoo Peninsula, I was there this afternoon, I couldn't get a signal this afternoon in High Halstow. So would a hardwired one give a better protection for that?
Not really. I mean, the percentage of hardwired machines, as far as I'm aware, is zero in Medway. There was a couple of chaps that did have them. They took them out of the cars in the end. You are right, they are very cumbersome. They use a multi-roaming SIM. There are devices available which are mobile, which I brought along to the previous meeting, which use a multi-roaming SIM. So whatever the strongest signal is, it will pick up on it. I use just a standard device that connects up to my smartphone, which uses mobile data for that. And you're all right, we do have signal outages, but I've got a dedicated work phone with one SIM in it, with one network. My personal phone is always on me, so I've obviously got another SIM from a different network in there, so I can get signal wherever I am in Medway Towns. There's no possibility of signal outages for me personally. I've never ever had to hotspot one network from the other. For example, last night, early hours of this morning, should we say, I took a payment in the Isle of Grain. No issues at all. So I don't think there's any problem with signal strength within Medway.
Thanks, Councillor Sands. Councillor Peake?
Yes, thank you, Chair. When I first read this, I had two initial reactions. The first one was, what about customer service? Because I'm increasingly irritated. I don't know if it's my age. But these days, it always seems to be DIY, doesn't it? You go to the supermarket, it's been over 100 quid, and you're the one who's got to do all the work, putting the items through the machine, then it breaks down. So when I get into a taxi, I want service. So that's my starting point. But then, as Councillor Joyce said, Councillor Filmer said, it's over 10 years ago since I had a business. I certainly wouldn't want somebody telling me how to run my business. Just as a basic principle, that would be really, really annoying. However, I had a card machine. And then I started, so this is my thought process, and I started thinking, well, maybe it was the cost, because I used to have to pay the privilege to give my customer that service. I had to pay. I was better off if they paid in cash. I had to pay a fee. But that wasn't particularly mentioned. So anyway, I've looked on page 33 to see if somehow I've misread the report, and it does say that there are potential costs from as little as £15 to £150. But, Ms Jackson, you didn't say that as your reason why they objected. So I'm just curious to know whether that was an issue or not.
Sorry, I just want to make sure we're keeping on the items. Eddie, what is it you're asking Mandy or Nigel from the report? What would you like to know?
All right, sorry. Whether there was any feedback from any of the taxi drivers, whether it was anything to do with any kind of setup costs that would put them off.
So I think Mandy's in the survey and in the responses we've had the comments back, which are in your papers. We've had the comments what people said why and
it's a summary.
Yeah, they were the comments. Yeah, summary of the comments. So we have got that there. Nigel, just want to touch on just a little bit about the setup fee for Councillor Peake. That'd be great.
Yeah, thank you, Chair. I mean, the setup fees for the mobile devices range from £0 to £30–40. Once you create an account with the merchant, you then buy a terminal, or you get the terminal provided free of charge. So the costs for setting up the devices are minimal.
Thanks, Councillor Peake. Councillor Brake, coming back to you for one more.
Yeah, no, thank you very much. Obviously, what we're looking at here this evening is also touches on the safety of passengers, and really anybody getting into a taxi needs to be assured that when they get to the other end, they're going to be able to pay. And I suppose in many respects it's down to the passenger as well as the taxi driver to make sure that people have got the ability to pay for the fare. And I was just thinking of, I think it was Councillor Peake who mentioned the fact that this is an ideal opportunity of spreading the word and rejuvenating the taxi trade across Medway. I think, what was it, Councillor Pratt? I knew it came from over that way somewhere, but yeah, I was quite afraid, Councillor Peake, it was probably your shirt that sort of threw me a bit. Only joking. But no, that said, it occurred to me that that opportunity of rolling out the new process that's going to be available to people in Medway, that really we ought to be pushing home the fact that to the members of public living in Medway, that they have a responsibility if they're going to get into a taxi and they haven't got cash on them and they would want to pay by card, they've got that responsibility to make sure that a card payment is going to be accepted. And if they don't want to get into a taxi that doesn't offer card payment or for whatever reason, then they've got the opportunity of going for another taxi. But I think it's something that we ought to consider for the reason of safety of passengers.
Thank you, Councillor Brake. I think that's what I was just moving on, actually. Moving on to, I think, just a few comments from me. I never thought I'd see 52.48 again. That was quite a scary thing. Can I just say, I just want to reiterate again that many drivers already use card machines. So we've got to thank them for doing that, because a good high percentage already use them. And, you know, the reason of this policy was to just tighten up those that aren't using them and should be. And I want to just reiterate the safety element again, because many of us have had, when, and Matt, Councillor Fern, you'll remember this, when I first started this, when we started this conversation, you backed me. Do you remember we was both here about this? It was about those individuals being left at, say, Rochester's train station or other places of an evening and not being able to access a taxi because they wouldn't accept debit card. And that was the concern that we had. And many, Mark, do you want to just come back from?
Yeah, sorry, just touching on the numbers, 52.48, I don't think that's actually a fair reflection of probably the amount of drivers that want it. Because if you're happy, got your machine, you probably wouldn't have bothered responding to the survey because you've already got it and it doesn't affect you. So I just wanted to make that point.
I think I was just talking about the 52.48 from another election somewhere. Can I just say, tonight, if this is agreed, it will be a big step forward. One, for the trade, because they will be you know, enabled to compete with our competitors. And Nigel, I will give you a bit just before I move to the votes. I know you want to say a couple of bits. But I also want to thank Mandy. I know through this work that there was a week of this during this process that Mandy worked extremely hard, and legal. They worked extremely hard together to nail down this wording, making sure that, for example, we can it was about the vehicle, wasn't it, Mandy? The vehicle and the person, making sure that we can enforce this no matter who gets in a car and drives it. So I don't want us to underestimate the work of our licensing team. You were saying about other areas, Councillor Brake. I think we're very lucky to have our licensing team here. I know they're in Gravesham as well, and they're very lucky. But I think we're very lucky, and hopefully, you never know, this could be a real shining star to seeing how it goes forward with regards to this, for this working. Did you want to come in? One more question, because I'm finishing off. Go on. Yeah.
I know you're right to go. Sorry, I just wanted to make a few comments about it. So, really wanted to thank Mandy and the legal team for the work they've done on this. Do you think this is a real opportunity for Medway to shine? This is about us putting in best practice in the industry, signalling that we want a modern service here in Medway, and giving us a real opportunity to compete with those rideshare apps, which clearly have a major impact on the industry here in Medway and Kent. Also want to point out that, you know, this is also a really important policy change in terms of improving our safeguarding, particularly for vulnerable people who use the taxi service here in Medway. And I do hope that this will also lead to a reduction in the cherry picking of rides and fares, something that I have personally experienced here in Medway, and I really hope that that will start to change that behaviour as well.
Thank you, Councillor Hamilton. It's so good to have a committee that ends up, it takes all my words. It's wonderful. You're really brilliant. Nigel, do you just want to finish off? Because you have come, and I just want members to be aware you worked all night, you'd normally be working this evening, so we do appreciate you coming here before you go into your shift. So I want to just let you have the choice to say a few words.
Yeah, thank you, Chair. Obviously, there's argument from both sides from the drivers on here, but it's only a minority. Councillor MacDonald is very clear in stating that a lot of the drivers already accept card, and we have modernised. If this is passed today, it's just a case of rubber stamping this consistency across the service to ensure that every single person in Medway can use our services. It also is a good thing, a very positive thing, especially regarding our Uber action and the Council's determination to address the full council motion, which was passed in 2019, and the working groups which have been set up on that. I just hope that the committee makes the right decision today, moving forwards, for the trade and in the future. Thank you.
Thank you, Nigel, and I'd like to thank the MLTDA for being really inclusive on this, because you did get some backlash from some, and as per usual, working really well with Mandy and the team. So thank you very much for that. Can I just? It was the reassurance point I wanted about the publicity. Just quickly, Mandy, because it has been brought up around making sure that if it is passed the full council, because obviously it passed tonight, still has to go to full council. If it is passed, just making sure that we do actually go out about it. We do some maybe press releases about the drivers now are you can get into any vehicle like Councillor Hamilton was saying. I think we need to do that. There is a way of us working together and doing that, isn't there?
Yeah, we can certainly contact our comms team once full council, if it goes forward for full council's approval. The comms team, we would request that they did a press release via maybe Kent Online, especially as they had the involvement previously. But we could also request that it gets included in Medway Matters, which goes to every household, so that it can highlight the service provision that our Medway drivers provide.
That'd be great, Mandy. And I know between you and Mark, we could, let's maybe try and get the MLTDA involved in that press release if we can, because it'd be a really good thing for us. Okay, members, Vice Chair, recommendation.
Thank you, Chair. The committee is requested to recommend to full council for the approval of the inclusion of the following requirement in the Hackney carriage and private hire policy. Card payment machines, all licensed Hackney and private hire drivers must provide a card payment facility in accordance with guidance for electronic payment devices.
Okay, is that seconded, members? Please, seconded. Is that agreed? Agreed. Thank you. Brilliant. Thank you very much, members. That's the end of the meeting, isn't it, Nicola? Yep. Thank you very much, members. Have a good evening. Thank you.